Number 10. NASA's flying frog. We'll kick this list off with one of my favorite photos from history ever. On September 13th, 2011, NASA's Leidy spacecraft lifted off from Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. Now, to witness a spacecraft take off and go to space, it's amazing, right? People travel across the country to hopefully catch a glimpse of this experience, right? Now, one frame of this specific launch, one photo here, shows an airborne frog. Just flying, he's spread eagle, just in the air, no idea how he got there. The team behind the launch confirms that this photo is real. Can you imagine what's going through his mind right now during this photo? In fact, what was he doing 5 seconds before this launch was ignited? Just sitting on a throttle booster, eating a fly. He's like, man, what can go wrong? Life, you know? If you ever have the chance to check out a NASA launch, keep your head up. It might rain frogs depending where you are. Number 9. Planet 9. With James Webb in the picture, we're seeing more of our universe now than ever. For a while now, astronomers have been confident about a 9th planet orbiting the sun. Now, this 9th planet is hiding far behind Neptune, so we haven't seen it, obviously. We've been here before, though. It's hard to tell the scale of these things. The largest asteroid in the solar system was discovered back in 1801, and that day it was initially classified as a planet. But just like Pluto, it was, kicked out of the planet party. Get out of here. You're too small for us. Must be this tall to be a planet. Peace. Talk about this 9th planet began in 2014 when American astronomer Dr. Scott Shepard, he found a small dwarf planet candidate called 2012 VP113. And the orbit of this dwarf planet was too large. It didn't make any sense. Something had to be assisting this colossal spin. For the planet to be acting this way, it would have to be 10 times more massive than our planet here, Earth, and it would take at least 10,000 years to orbit the sun just once. So, Happy New Year, I guess. And considering that it's tucked far behind Neptune, this 9th planet is around 200 times further out than ours. So far, we've covered about 30% of the prime area this planet could be in, and every space fact that I do, I also feel so anxious right after. Holy smokes, space is so scary. Number 8. Bermuda Triangle of Space. Awesome, we love these. If you thought the Bermuda Triangle here on Earth was jarring, buckle up. Turns out they got one in space as well. Awesome, great. I feel the space anxiety in my chest today. A handful of astronauts have experienced this in real life while orbiting our planet. They call it the South Atlantic Anomaly, and it's part of the Earth's magnetic field, and many scientists have connected this triangle to the Van Allen radiation belts. So right above the South Atlantic, when the International Space Station passes through this area, computers often stop working, and astronauts will sometimes experience cosmic flashes in their eyes. That's terrifying. The Hubble has also glitched out when trying to take observations, so what's going on here in this weird triangle? Who knows? Maybe it's the Illuminati that Kanye's talking about. Number 7. Elst Pizarro. This next one is quite bizarro. First discovered in 1979, its orbit in the asteroid belt led to it being classified initially as an asteroid. Yet when it was examined more closely in 1996, it showed itself to have a tail like a comet. We love an evolving space rock, I guess. Keep changing, keep confusing us, sure. One possibility, maybe there was a collision at some point and that crash ended up exposing some subsurface ice on the body, which is slowly now being lost to space. So now it's whipping by, which explains the new tail. Elst Pizarro was an asteroid and then a comet, and then once its layers have melted off, now it could be just a plain old boring asteroid. Again, we're not too sure here. Elst Pizarro got the zoomies for a hot minute, but we're not sure why. Experts had hoped to launch the Castalia spacecraft in 2028 to get a better look, but since 2016 the European Space Agency hasn't had any funding to give this project the green light, so we'll never know probably. Awesome. What's Elon doing? Can we send him up? Take a look. Number 6. Scotland Fireball. What's believed to be space junk belonging to Elon Musk, this fireball seen crashing down over Scotland and Northern Ireland has experts scratching their heads. The fireball was visible for 20 seconds around 10 p.m. on September 14th. Reminder, this was only a couple of months ago, so you might remember it. There were around 1,200 reports on the ball, including 10 videos. The UK Meteor Network wrote on Twitter the next day stating, quote, "We have checked the Starlink deorbit and it would have not have come anywhere near the UK. At this point we cannot find any known space junk or satellite deorbit that could account for this fireball. We are looking at the data again." End quote. This lasted 20 seconds, where a meteor would be much shorter. Any theories as to what this was? I know a lot of our viewers live around this area, so comment down below if you witnessed Optimus Prime's arrival 2 months ago. Number 5. Michigan Lights. If you're a fan of the series Unsolved Mysteries over on Netflix, this next one here, should ring a familiar bell. March 8th, 1994, more than 300 911 calls were made, all of which were reporting strange lights in the night sky right along the eastern shore of Lake Michigan. That is way too close to our home right now. That's terrifying. I was born in 1994 as well, so who knows? Maybe I was dropped off by aliens. These objects, these UFOs in question, were described as round like discs, or they were like floating spheres. Both jarring descriptions. They all had different colored lights as well, so planes are obviously out of the question. It's been so long now that the case has finally found its way to Netflix, so no, it is still not solved. Number 4. Steve. Nice. An unexplainable light in the sky named Steve. This sounds Canadian already. Back in 2018, this mystery came to light. There's a light in the sky in Canada, and scientists still have no idea what it is. All they know is that they call it Steve. Steve is short for strong thermal emission velocity enhancement. Now, Steve's appearance, I can't lie, he is beautiful. He's gorgeous to look at. Steve looks like a white purplish ribbon that stretches throughout the sky, almost like the northern lights, only scientists are sure that Steve is not an aurora. It's very hot and it doesn't last long. Classic Steve, doesn't last long, eh? Must be Canadian. Number 3, Hodge's meteorite. Now these meteorites, they can happen pretty often, but luckily most of the time it doesn't wipe out everybody and everything. That's pretty good. Sorry dinosaurs, thanks for taking one for the team for us. Back in 1954, residents in Talladega County, Alabama, noticed a ball of fire heading towards them. Now, we didn't have Twitter, we couldn't warn people that maybe a meteor was about to hit and wipe us out forever, and we also didn't really know how to tell if meteorites were coming and how scary it was, so it was alarming. Especially for Anne Elizabeth Hodges, who got hit by that said space rock. Yeah, that ball of fire that we always see going through the sky, that hit her. It grazed her hip. Now you may be asking, was she outside stargazing at this point? Was she doing some cosmic ritual? No, she was napping in her living room, and then an 8-pound chunk of meteorite smashed through her roof and again, only grazed her hip. She got grazed by a meteorite and then received a bruise. First human to ever get hit by a meteorite, and probably the last. What a flex that is. Imagine putting that on Tinder. Number 2, go fast. Okay, a bit more modern now. This one was trending recently, but it was originally recorded back in 2015. It was part of that big alien leak that we got to witness over the pandemic. That was fun. That was just what we needed. Middle of a pandemic, the news is like, hey, check out these UFOs also. We don't know. Good luck. Now what you're seeing here is an FA-18 Super Hornet following a UAP. Now we don't call them UFOs anymore because that's so M. Night Shyamalan, alright? We don't do that. We call them UAPs. Also sounds a little smarter. US Navy personnel caught this UAP flying along the east coast, and there was no exhaust, there was no wings, just a really fast sphere, almost like I mentioned earlier. A 45-foot-long egg, 25,000 feet above the Atlantic, just whipping, and it flew away, and nobody saw it ever since. Do we think UFOs are balls like spheres? I think that's the new thing. We went from discs to spheres. Finally, number 1, Uranus tilts. Jokes aside, and you best believe I had about 20 ready, we're still trying to figure out why Uranus rotates on its side, when every other planet has their axis pointing upwards, right? Uranus's tilt is 98 degrees, so there's long periods of time, like 40 years long, where the north or south pole will just face the sun directly. It'll just grill the sun for 40 years straight. Perfect place to get your tan on. The other pole, not so much. You're gonna be pale for 40 years, like my dad. Other planets in our solar system, they have a prograde rotation. Now Venus, that has a retrograde rotation. But why? What's going on here? So far, our leading theory is that something massive may have hit these planets many, many moons ago, early in their planet life. Scientists believe that Uranus was hit by a meteor and completely threw it off course. Gotta be careful. Gotta watch Uranus, alright? Hit that thumbs up for Uranus.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Dragonfly 44. This is what is called an ultra-diffuse galaxy, and it is located in the Comma cluster. This galaxy is of concern because of some interesting observations that were made in relation to it back in 2016. Basically, this galaxy was first discovered because of the influence it is having on our Milky Way galaxy. Astronomers noticed some strange sort of ripples in our galaxy and subsequently realized that this was due to the pull of Dragonfly 44's gravity. gravity as it orbited around our own. Of course, once it was realized that this galaxy was the culprit, experts started looking into the galaxy more, and that is when it was realized that this galaxy is actually quite dark. In fact, we can only really see this galaxy due to 4 bright stars that shine out of the otherwise dark, gloomy galaxy. This has led to the hypothesis that this galaxy must be largely made of dark matter. This is extremely interesting because not only is dark matter one of the most pressing mysteries of space, but this galaxy was found to be made up of 99.99% dark matter. Some even say that this galaxy shouldn't even really be able to hold itself together with so few stars. This is all to say that this galaxy is extremely interesting, and with further investigation and research, it may just be the key that helps us understand what in the world dark matter really is and what it's made of. In our number 9 spot today, we have cosmic disappearance. Some sort of unidentified thing that is larger than anything in our known universe is sucking portions of the Milky Way away. I know, it's terrifying, and it definitely is concerning, considering it's the place that we all call home. This discovery came in 2009 when researchers first found a cluster of galaxies moving at extremely fast speed towards a small area of sky. This area is located between the constellations of Centaurus and Vela, and whatever this whole thing is, it has experts completely stumped as to what it could be. For now, it remains a space mystery that has been dubbed Dark Flow so that it can sit on the shelf with the other terrifying space mysteries like dark energy and dark matter, whatever those are. In our number 8 spot today, we have Tycho. This is what is being called a zombie star. This frightening name comes from the fact that this star was once a white dwarf, which is basically what is left over after a star exploded, but its mass was not enough to become a neutron star or a black hole. What's different about these zombie stars, however, is that they have gobbled up a bunch of mass from another nearby star, which then leads to them exploding all over again in what is called a Type 1a supernova. These blasts are insanely luminous and bright. Some even say that they have the light of 1 billion suns. This is all to say that they are insanely interesting objects and events that exist in the universe, and they are also thought to be helping scientists study what the heck dark energy is. In our number 7 spot today, we have Oumuamua. A few years ago, scientists all agreed that we had found an object that was flying through our solar system, and they called it Oumuamua, and it was widely agreed that it was an interstellar comet that had swung out from around another star. Upon closer examination, however, they realized that something was propelling it and causing it to accelerate, and this is when the debate started because they just don't really know why. Avi Loeb, who's a Harvard University astrophysicist, proposed the idea that rather than a comet, this could be an alien probe that is being pushed by a light sail, which is a very wide but extremely thin piece of material that accelerates by being pushed by solar radiation. Other scientists didn't agree with this and instead said that it's possible that hydrogen ice could have melted off of the object in a way that would mimic a rocket engine or something of that nature. Avi then wrote in a study that hydrogen ice is too easily heated and it would have melted off long before it reached our solar system. I guess all in all, we just have to wait it out while the scientists debate and gather more evidence to really know what is going on behind this one. In our number 6 spot today, we have the wandering moon. The moon is apparently slowly, sadly, moving away from Earth. When I say slowly, I mean slowly, as it's at a rate of about half an inch a year, but still, when we're talking about our cosmic best buddy, the moon isn't only the thing that lights up our night sky. The moon plays a vital role to our lives here on Earth due to its great companionship and its gravitational pull. The moon's gravity is what causes the tides of our ocean, so without our moon, who knows what would happen to our marine ecosystems. The moon is also responsible for the axial tilt of Earth and how it stays in relatively the same place. Without the moon, we either wouldn't have any tilt at all, or we would be tilted all the way. This would mean that we would either have no seasons, or some of the most extreme seasons any of us have ever seen. While it doesn't appear the moon is going anywhere soon, sometimes we just have to keep an eye on her to make sure. In our number 5 spot today, we have the mysterious gap. Basically, a new analysis by scientists at MIT of ancient meteorites found something new and super interesting. In the early solar system, there was what is referred to as a protoplanetary disk of dust and gas that rotated around the sun, and eventually it coalesced into the planets that we know and love today. So this new study and analysis suggests that this sort of mysterious gap existed within this disk somewhere around, I don't know, 4.567 billion years ago, and it was in an area near where the asteroid belt is today. The reason this gap is mysterious is because it isn't quite clear what the cause of this gap was. There are a few possibilities, including Jupiter, during the time when it began to take its shape. Because of its extremely large gravitational gravitational pull, it could have pushed gas and dust towards the outskirts, which then would leave a gap in the developing disk. There are other possibilities, but regardless of whatever caused this gap, it is said to have likely served as a cosmic boundary that kept material on either side from interacting with each other. In our number 4 spot today, we have a blitzar. So normally when stellar black holes are formed, they're the result of a large star exploding into a supernova. This then has the core normally collapsing into either a neutron star or a black hole. Blitzars are a hypothetical type of neutron star where they spin so fast that if they slow down, they'll collapse right into a black hole. I do understand that they are theoretical at this point, but some researchers believe that these stars might be an explanation for fast radio bursts should we find that they in fact do exist. In January of 2015, there were 7 different events that experts thought could be attributed to blitzars, but it is thought that they actually might occur once every 10 seconds in our observable universe. The magnetic field around a blitzar would clear anything prior to it turning into a black hole, which means that no nearby material would fall in upon the initial collapse, which means that there is no burst of gamma rays or X-rays, which is usually seen when other black holes form, and this is exactly why, if they do exist, they are hard to detect. Should we come to find concrete evidence of their existence, these guys would prove incredibly valuable insight into the formation of black holes. In our number 3 spot today, we have Hoag's object. Okay, so there are different shapes to galaxies. That's not the weirdest thing in the world. You know, we live in a spiral shaped one, it's beautiful. There are other galaxies called ellipticals that are more like oval shaped, but one galaxy in particular, which is now called Hoag's object, is truly like none we've ever seen. This galaxy has a yellow core, and this core is surrounded by an outer ring of blue stars that are much younger than the core, but in the middle between the two, there's just nothing, and researchers are completely stumped as to how this could have formed. The galaxy was first discovered in the 1950s, and since then, there is one leading theory as to how it could have been formed, but it still isn't concrete. Basically, this leading theory suggests that perhaps a small galaxy sped through a larger disc-shaped galaxy, which then created this bizarre situation, but the problem with this theory is that there are no signs of any nearby galaxies that could have served as this sort of bullet in this scenario. If that happened, it also would have sped up the core of Hoag's object, but we can observe it as moving quite slowly, so that also rules out this theory. There have been other galaxies discovered that have some similar characteristics to this one, but none share all of the qualities seen in this very bizarre galaxy. In our number 2 spot today, we have Haumea. Back in 2017, this dwarf planet passed between Earth and a distant star, which allowed scientists to get a better look at it, and thus they were able to discover some new findings. Haumea sits in an area beyond Neptune that is called the Kuiper Belt, and it is actually one of the largest objects inside of the belt. Before the new discoveries in 2017, we already knew that this dwarf planet was weird. I mean, it has kind of a weird elongated shape, it has 2 moons, and its day only lasts 4 hours, which means that it's the fastest spinning large object in our entire solar system. It is thought that its fast spin might be responsible for its weird shape, but either way, scientists were quite surprised in 2017 when they realized that this strange planet actually has rings. This means that Haumea likely had some sort of collision, and probably not too long ago, relatively speaking. This collision likely happened somewhere from 1 billion to several hundred million years ago, but the search for the origins of these rings brings a whole new mystery to the dwarf planet. In our number 1 spot today, we have magnetars. These space things are actually a type of neutron star, but what makes them different is that they have this insanely powerful magnetic field. Like, we are talking 1,000 times stronger than a regular neutron star, or about 1 trillion times stronger than the magnetic field that Earth has. That means that these type of stars would have enough magnetic power to wipe every credit card on Earth, even from a distance halfway to the moon. They're the most magnetic stars in the entire universe. This is all very cool and interesting, but it's also important to note that if you were to venture within about 600 miles or 1,000 kilometers of one of these stars, you would die. Very quickly. The magnetic field would destroy your body. It would tear electrons from your atoms, which would then basically turn you into a cloud of monotonic ions, or single atoms without electrons. This is all to say that next to black holes, these are one of the most bizarre objects in the entire universe. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have space energy. While a team of astronomers was working to map out the universe, which, for a second, imagine that's your job. What a task. Anyway, while they were doing this, they found a very mysterious object that is sending out bursts of energy every 20 minutes. This object is somewhere around 4,000 light years away, but despite this distance, it was sending out energy bursts that were so big that it was one of the largest radio sources in the entire sky. That's no easy feat. These energy bursts were occurring in a cycle where one would happen for 1 minute every 20 minutes before it would disappear for a few hours, and then this whole thing would repeat over again. There is nothing that we know of in this universe right now that would behave like this, so at the moment, while there are of course many hypotheses and theories, this is a mystery waiting to be uncovered. In our number 9 spot today we have 2022 AE1. Just a few months ago in January, as the year began, scientists were watching an asteroid dubbed 2022 AE1 that became the riskiest one observed in over a decade. The initial observations of this asteroid placed it impacting with Earth on roughly July 4th, 2023, which would mean that there would not be enough time to deflect it, and this asteroid was large enough to do some real damage should it strike an area. Yeah, it was most definitely a cause for concern. There was a week where the moon outshone this asteroid, and so experts weren't able to see it and continued tracking its path, but once the moon was out of this phase, the risk seemed to have diminished. As of now, this asteroid has been taken off of the risk list, but who knows? It seems as though things can change quite quickly and unexpectedly outside the cozy home and protection of our atmosphere. In our number 8 spot today we have a meteorite. On February 28, 2021, reports came pouring in from across the UK of an unusual streak of light that was seen in the sky. These reports were far behind the UK's Fireball Alliance though, as their cameras had already picked up the signal and they were already in the midst of estimating its landing site. That's right, this streak of light was a meteor, if the title didn't give it away. It's a remnant of our early solar system that has been flying through space at unbelievable speeds until it came down through our atmosphere and ended its long, awesome journey scattered in a bunch of pieces across rural Gloucestershire. Teams were sent out to be responsible for the recovery of the extraterrestrial material, which was found in a family's driveway as well as in a sheep's field nearby. This meteorite is a rare specimen known as primitive carbonaceous chondrite, which is said to contain materials that have been essentially unaltered since the formation of the solar system 4.5 billion years ago. The pieces of this meteorite can give us insights into the building blocks of the planets, and it can potentially give us clues as to how the Earth came to be this wonderful planet that possesses all of the resources necessary to sustain human life. In our number 7 spot today we have King Tut's meteorite. So I actually learned about this one from Taylor, since he's the little history bee, and it is so interesting. Quite recently, researchers made quite the discovery that actually solved a mystery surrounding a dagger that once belonged to King Tut 3,400 years ago. An analysis of the king's weapon found that it was actually forged out of meteorite just outside of Egypt. That is so cool. This whole artifact and the way it was forged is one of the greatest mysteries in history. It is exceptionally unusual in the fact that it was made out of iron, which is a material that the Egyptians would not begin to smelt for another 500 years. This was just one of the many treasures that was found within his tomb, and one that continues to add to the incredible accomplishments of the ancient Egyptians. In our number 6 spot today we have Tabby's star. This star, which has also been referenced as the WTF star, is an F-type main sequence star which is located in the constellation Cygnus about 1,470 light years away from Earth. This star is of particular importance because of the fact that it shows unusual light shifts, which includes a 22% dimming in brightness. Basically, from our point of view, something continually blocks the star, and it likely isn't a planet because a Jupiter-sized planet would only block about 1% of the star the size of this one, so what could it possibly be? There are a few theories out there surrounding this anomaly, but none are able to fully explain what is happening here. Some believe that it is some sort of uneven ring of dust orbiting the star, and others believe that the star's luminosity fluctuates depending on the efficiency of the heat being transported to its photosphere. These are just two of the theories surrounding this star, but there are many more out there, and at this point we just don't know. Hopefully though, the James Webb Telescope, which was launched at the end of last year, will be able to get a more clear picture of what may be happening over there on Tabby's star. In our number 5 spot today we have new material. Of course, when meteorites show up to Earth, people are dying to get their hands on them to study them and see what all they contain. We get some pretty incredible deliveries of things that arrive on meteorites, and analysis has been able to identify about 300 minerals in different space debris that comes down to Earth, and 40 of those are ones that have only been found in meteorites. This is all very cool and interesting, but one of the most fascinating is the Allende meteorite. This is one that exploded over Mexico in 1969, and after analyzing samples from it, in 2012 scientists announced the discovery of a material that had never been seen on Earth, and that frankly no one knew was even possible to make. It was called pangite, and it consists of quite a strange variety of elements, including titanium, zirconium, and scandium. In our number 4 spot today we have CFBD SIR 2149. Ah yes, the rogue planet with the easiest name to remember. This planet really had the scientific community on edge in 2012. This is because most of the planets we are familiar with orbit a star. I mean, look at the one we're most familiar with. We clearly and thankfully do. That's not the case for this guy though. CFBD SIR 2149 seems to just be drifting across space without any sort of star. This planet is also huge. It is thought to be 7 times more massive than Jupiter, and Jupiter is quite a bit more massive than Earth. This isn't necessarily anything that we need to worry about. I mean, we're at home in our solar system with our star, not wandering around the universe or galaxy, so that's good. I mean, let's just hope it stays that way. Astronomers believe that there are likely billions of rogue planets, and that they might even outweigh the amount of planets that have suns. In our number 3 spot today we have shooting stars. Okay, so we often look to the night sky in an attempt to see a shooting star, and the chances might be pretty good depending on how light polluted the area is. I mean, either that or you're seeing one of the Starlink satellites, but either way, we know that shooting stars aren't really stars at all, and are instead meteors burning up as they move quickly through Earth's atmosphere. But what if I told you that there really are some shooting stars that are actually stars? Hypervelocity stars were discovered by astronomers in 2005, and it is thought that they occur, or form, when a binary star system, or a star system that has 2 stars, gets destroyed by a black hole. One of the stars in the system will usually fall into the black hole, which just may send the other one flying across through space as fast as millions of miles per hour. It's definitely not the same thing that we think of when we think of shooting stars, but it is quite the galactic event. In our number 2 spot today we have quasars. If you aren't exactly familiar with them, they are super compact objects that kind of have a star-like appearance as they are very luminous, and it is thought that these guys are powered by supermassive black holes. So there's obviously quite a few interesting things about these, but one of the most interesting is in relation to one in particular called APM 082795255. This one contains a black hole that is surrounded by a vapor cloud, and within the cloud is 140 trillion times the amount of water on the Earth. It's the largest water reservoir ever discovered. That's insane. Researchers believe that this giant watery cloud formed long ago, just 1.6 billion years after the universe itself. In our number 1 spot today we have stardust. Just a few years ago, researchers in Australia made a startling discovery. Ancient grains that were discovered inside of a meteorite that had landed inside of the country were studied, and it was revealed that they were actually grains of stardust. This dust was formed somewhere from 5 to 7 billion years ago, and it is now the oldest solid material ever found on Earth. These kinds of pre-solar grains are a very rare find. In fact, they're so rare that they're only found in about 5% of meteorites that have fallen to Earth. This is a fascinating discovery because having something like this really is the next best thing aside from having the actual star itself, and it gives insight into our universe billions and billions of years ago.
Starting us off at number 10, the Cadon meteorite. While it may not have been the biggest meteorite to crash into the Earth, it certainly raised many questions once it was here. On December 30th, 1980, what looked like a fireball was seen in the sky hurling its way towards the Soviet military base. Now, upon impact, they discovered a surprisingly small stone weighing only about 4 pounds, but it was what was inside the stone that caused a commotion. Inside the meteorite was a wide range of incredibly rare and unique minerals, many of which are not found in nature, causing quite a bit of confusion and debate around the stone's origins. Some scientists believe it originated from the Martian moon of Phobos, but no one really knows for certain. While there have been several meteorites from Mars to land on Earth, if suspicions are true, the Caden would be the first Martian moon rock to be found on Earth. And who knows what that could mean. Next up at number 9, a piece of the moon. As fate would have it, a piece of the moon made its way into the desert of Morocco, and in 2014, it was discovered and sold privately to a collector. The moon chunk weighed about 6 pounds and was extremely rare, as very few pieces of lunar material have been known to crash land onto the planet. Now, as cool as this seems, scientists have discovered that moon dust can cause huge health risks, and long-term exposure is highly toxic and has the potential to even cause death. So whoever has this piece of moon rock better have it sealed tight, because it could be the end of them. Next up at number 8, Tomanawos. To understand the craziness of this meteorite, we have to rewind a few billion years. Well, 4.5 billion years to be exact. Meteorites are usually made of iron and nickel. These iron and nickel atoms were formed inside stars that eventually exploded, sending the elements rocketing across the nebula. Over time, the elements were forced together to create what we call protoplanets, which were the first planet-like orbs of the solar system. Now, 4.5 billion years ago, Tomanawos was at the core of one of these protoplanets, but at some point in time likely collided with another protoplanet, sending huge chunks back into space. Then, 17,000 years ago, it crashed down into the Earth and landed on an ice cap in Canada. It wasn't discovered until thousands of years later, and by that time it had made quite the journey down to Oregon. The 15-ton rock caused quite a stir and even a lawsuit when in 1902 a man tried to steal it from the indigenous people and charge others to see the strange and mysterious space rock. But the joke was on him, as the Oregon Iron and Steel Company actually owned the land where he'd found the meteorite and sued for its return. Whatever it was, there was something about this meteorite that drew people in. And who knows, maybe it really was cursed. Next up at number 7, a strange black object. In July of this year, Australian farmer Mike Miners was doing his usual morning survey of his farm when all of a sudden he spotted something that caught his eye. There in the distant part of the grasslands was a large jet black object measuring roughly 9 feet and sticking straight up out of the ground. Unsure of what was going on, he took a closer look at the object and eventually decided to call the Civil Aviation Safety Authority to see if they could help. Once he was on the phone with them, they quickly urged him to call NASA directly. Eventually, it was discovered to be a piece of space junk, likely from the SpaceX Dragon capsule, but many conspiracy theorists didn't seem to buy this answer, believing it to be some kind of remnant from a UFO. And to tell you the truth, I have no idea if those conspiracy theorists are losing their minds or if they are onto something, but anything that is falling from outer space will always freak me out. Coming in at number 6, the microscopic diamond. There are many things people can expect to find falling from the sky, but tiny microscopic space diamonds would not be at the top of my list. Back in 1969, an unexpected meteorite came crashing down into Mexico, which led to one of the biggest manhunts trying to find all the scattered fragments. One of the strange finds were small diamond fragments containing, now stay with me here, isotopic signatures of materials formed prior to the existence of our solar system. Which, listen, I'm not really blessed with much of a science brain, but essentially it's really frickin' crazy what they found. The origins of the diamond is up for debate. There are 2 theories about how they came to be. The first is the formation inside a giant star that long ago exploded in a supernova, and the second is from an asteroid impact in space. But either way, it's an incredibly strange find that raised more questions upon its discovery than it answered. Next up at number 5, a molten object. Maybe it was aliens, or maybe it's some cursed artifact from outer space, but either way, no one had any clue what they'd found. Back in 2016, an inexplicable molten object fell from the sky in Siberia and was actually caught on film. 2 YouTubers said they received the footage from a witnessing Russian man and wasted no time posting the video for all to see. Whatever it was covered in green flames, an unrecognizable white foamy substance, distance and grabbed the attention of local firemen who can be seen attempting to put out the giant and strange green flames. Many online viewers were quick to try and figure out what exactly they were witnessing, and some said it was probably a satellite that fell onto the Earth, but some swear they saw a UFO hovering over Turkey just 3 days prior and believe the object to have been the crashed extraterrestrial ship. Maybe the aliens were trying to send us a message? Let's just hope it was a crashed satellite. Coming in at number 4, fireballs. There are few things that make us worry about the end of days more than giant fire orbs raining down from the sky and terrorizing our planet. Well, in September of 2019, it seemed like just that was happening in Chile when huge and mysterious flaming objects lit up the sky, cascading over the largest island in Chile, horrifying the locals. The fireballs plummeted to the earth and caused 7 bushfires across the island, though luckily no one was injured. Initially, most assumed it was meteorites crashing down, but after a few days inspecting the site, no traces were found at any of the 7 locations. Officials were confused by the findings, as the only other logical explanation would be space debris, but that as well seemed to have been ruled out by many. So if it wasn't a meteorite and it wasn't a rogue piece of space debris, what could have fallen from the sky? Could it have anything to do with an unknown space civilization? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Coming in at number 3, metal shreds. Long before Chile saw the flaming balls of fire crashing down, Argentina was met with an equally terrifying phenomenon. Back in 1991, out of nowhere, giant shards of flaming metal appeared glowing in the sky. The ominous showers appeared to be darting down towards the planet, terrifying the locals. This metallic rain turned out to be fragments from a Russian space station named the Salyut 7, which to this day is still considered to be one of the largest human-made objects to re-enter the atmosphere. Now, of course, engineers made many attempts to guide the fragments toward the Atlantic Ocean, but as the station was in a low orbit to the planet, they were not really able to properly redirect anything. So soon the 88,000 pounds of metal were crashing down to the Earth, and although no one was injured, it certainly terrorized all who witnessed it. Coming in at number 2, Vladimir Komarov. Infamously known as the man who fell from space, Vladimir was a famous Russian astronaut, or cosmonaut as they were called during the Cold War space race. Back in 1967, he embarked on a crazy mission that, although he was completely trained to complete, was ultimately rushed. Allegedly, the spacecraft had a multitude of structural issues, and despite engineers warning the Soviet officials that the craft was not ready, they continued with the mission as planned. Vladimir took off and made his way up into the eternity of space, and even executed 16 orbits around the Earth. But something went awry with his mission, so he was instructed to make his way back down to Earth. However, things went south upon trying to re-enter the atmosphere when his parachute would not engage, and Vladimir plummeted back towards the Earth, crashing in a horrific explosion. Rumor has it that while he was plummeting to his fate, he was screaming at the Soviets for forcing him to do this mission. And while he may not have been something that originated from space, it was certainly cursed from the very beginning of its journey. And last up in our number 1 spot, the Roswell incident. Back in 1947, a huge metallic object crashed down on the Earth, causing a major uproar for conspiracy theorists across the globe. Now, normally I'm not one to jump on the conspiracy wagon, but I don't know how anyone can look me in the eye and tell me that this is not the spinning image of a flying saucer. I mean, come on. Now, here is where it gets crazy. After the dust from the initial sighting settled, the Roswell Air Force released a statement admitting that they had found a flying disc, but then quickly retracted that statement, saying instead it was simply a conventional weather balloon, and have stuck to this story ever since. But this change in description caused many to believe the government was covering up valuable information. Then, in 1979, Lieutenant Jesse Marcel, a key figure in the whole debacle, was interviewed for a documentary about the incident and admitted that despite what they told newspapers in 1947, that he truly believed it was an extraterrestrial entity that was found that day, and that the government had ordered him to keep quiet. Now, that isn't suspicious at all. So what do you guys think? Government weather balloon or top secret alien spaceship?
Number 10. Spaceballs. Over the course of decades, humans have begun to clog up the Earth's surrounding area with space junk. Defunct projects, satellites, broken or discarded pieces of spacecrafts. It will become a serious problem at some point, and it's beginning to show. There have been many instances now of strange metallic balls crashing into the ground and being found in multiple countries: Mexico, Spain, Vietnam, Namibia, Australia, and many others. They hurtle towards the Earth, and some have crashed a little too close for comfort. Most of these mysterious objects seem to just be auxiliary fuel tanks from satellites that were discarded or crashed nearby, and they fell off early, landing in a completely different place than was planned. But some of these, like the one in Mexico, still require more investigation, as they don't match any of the parts that we would have expected to be entering our atmosphere. This one even has an antenna, and reportedly fell from the sky while making strange noises, but was not accompanied by any fire, like a lot of debris entering the atmosphere would have. So where did these things come from then? Number 9. WTF. In 2013, the Catalina Sky Survey at the University of Arizona spotted an object in the night sky, and it seemed to have some weird properties. The object didn't move as though it was solid like rock, but it seemed to possibly be hollow, and it had a density of about 10% that of water, and it seemed to be about 6.5 feet in diameter. Large enough to house a person. But this didn't match any of the space junk that space agencies had been tracking for previous years, and adding even more to the confusion, the object seemed to disappear from sight, and it was not seen again until 2 years later, when it was officially given the name WT1190F, or WTF for short. Pretty fitting. Video and photos were taken of the object's re-entry into Earth's atmosphere, which was a scientific feat on its own, but the object was never recovered. It is assumed that it burned up from the immense heat of re-entry, but many people believe that it crashed into the ocean, and whatever was inside was either captured or lies in wait at the bottom of the sea, like those UFOs NASA admits that they found. Remember those? That was crazy. Number 8. Struck by a space rock. Alright, we've got 2 stories here, and you can either think of them as the result of a curse, or karma, or cosmic coincidence, but either way, these 2 women had a bad day. In 2001, Lottie Williams was exercising in a park in Tulsa, Oklahoma, when she looked up and saw a great ball of fire in the air. It was a rocket coming back towards Earth. She watched it approach, and as it got larger in the sky, she expressed her worry to her friends, but then it broke up into pieces and it was no longer visible to her. A few moments later, she felt what she described as a tap on her shoulder, and then something fell to the ground. This small blackened piece of metal had fallen from the rocket and just grazed her, and it could have been a lot worse, but she walked away being the first person to be hit by man-made space debris. But another woman was not as lucky. On November 30th, 1954, Ann Hodges was napping in her Alabama home when a piece of meteorite crashed through her roof and struck her in the side. It left a 3-foot wide hole in her roof and also left a massive bruise on her thigh and hand where she was hit. Luckily, the damages were only surface level, and though she went to the hospital the next night, it was because of her stress, not the injury. But if the space rock had been a few inches to the side, Ann would not have lived to tell the tale as the first person to be struck by a meteorite. I'm not sure if she's cursed with extremely bad luck or has really good luck. I'll leave that up to you. Number 7. Skylab. Launched by NASA as the first American space station, Skylab was cursed with issues from the moment it launched. The station strapped to a Saturn V rocket sustained severe damage during its deployment, including the loss of the station's micrometeoroid shield and one of its main solar panels, requiring it to have the first ever repair to an object in space, which is pretty cool. But it was again hit with problems when one of the pieces destabilized from orbit earlier than expected and crashed back to Earth. But it doesn't stop there. Due to increased solar activity, Skylab actually ended up falling towards Earth a year earlier than it was supposed to. There was supposed to be a shuttle mission to boost it back into orbit, but the shuttle wasn't ready in time. In an international media frenzy, the Skylab crash was everywhere. People had shirts with targets, contests were made to bring pieces of the wreckage for cash prizes, and people waited for the show. Due to a 4% calculation error on re-entry, the station did not burn up as quickly as expected, and pieces fell into Australia only 300 miles from Perth in an almost completely unpopulated area. Man, talk about a crash and burn. These scientists missed the mark so many times it's impressive the thing even hit Earth. Number 6. 300 million year old machine part. In 2013, a Russian man named Dmitry was adding coal to a fire when he noticed something strange. A shiny piece of metal was sticking out of the rock, and when he broke open the piece of coal, he found what seemed to be a piece of a metal bar with teeth like a piece of a gear. When analyzed, it was found to be made of aluminum with about 3% magnesium, an alloy that is not generally produced today. Not only that, but further examination shows machining marks, implying that it's a man-made piece, and it's similar to those that we may find in a modern microscope or other small machinery. But no one can explain how a seemingly man-made part appears in a piece of coal that was 300 million years old. So was this thing a remnant of a past unknown civilization? Maybe something from a time traveler or alien? One explanation is that it could have fallen to Earth from a meteorite all that time ago, but it wouldn't explain the fact that it seems man-made. This little hunk of metal continues to baffle scientists today. Number 5. Nuclear nuisance. The Cosmos 954 reconnaissance satellite launched by the Soviet Union in 1977 had some major issues. The launch went fine. Unlike Skylab, its deployment also went off without a hitch, and this long-term orbital satellite seemed like another mission success for the Soviet space program. It was meant to be circling the globe for years and years, but just 3 months later, the North American Aerospace Defense Command noticed the satellite making erratic maneuvers, changing the altitude of its orbit by up to 50 miles. And in secret meetings, the Soviet officials warned their US counterparts that they had lost control over the vehicle, and the system, which was intended to propel the spent nuclear reactor core into a safe disposal orbit, had failed. And just 4 months after its launch, it fell towards the Earth, right over Canada's Northwest Territories. The Soviets claimed that it had completely disintegrated upon re-entry, but that was not the case, as we discovered a 600-kilometer path of debris leading through the country, and a huge portion of it was radioactive because they failed to launch the reactor out. We Canadians began Operation Morning Light, a recovery effort that lasted over a year and for which we billed the Soviet Union $6 million, though they only ever paid us $3 million. Many small pieces of debris were collected, as well as 12 large portions of the satellite, only 2 of which were not radioactive. Number 4. Proof of panspermia. The theory of panspermia is that life did not naturally begin on Earth, but that it began with microbes stuck in space ice that fell to Earth on meteorites, and the amount of debate around this topic is huge, and we have a few examples that may just prove the theory. The Polonnaruwa meteorite was one that fell in Sri Lanka in 2012, and meteorites are always a good find, but this one was different. 12 days after it was witnessed falling through the sky, a scientist published a paper stating that after studying some electron micrographs, his team discovered fossilized diatoms, microscopic phytoplankton, inside the meteorite. In addition, his team of scientists reported in a separate article that they are certain that it is a meteorite that originated from a comet that also contained living diatoms. The microbes were remarkably similar to those found on Earth, leading to a debate on whether it was simply contaminated from the Earth's surface. But there is another example with even stronger proof of microscopic alien life. In 2018, a meteorite landed on a frozen lake in Michigan, and when it was examined, thousands of organic compounds that were formed billions of years ago were found. It helped that the quick recovery, along with the cold temperature, kept the water inside frozen for studying. Research is still being done, but this find has thrown the scientific world for a loop. Hopefully the organisms don't leave us with some alien curse or disease. Number 3. The Chelyabinsk meteor. Many of us will remember the 2013 meteor that rocked the world. At 20 meters in diameter, it was the largest natural object to enter our atmosphere since the Tunguska event, which destroyed a wide, remote, forested, and very sparsely populated area of Serbia. The Chelyabinsk meteor also is the only meteor confirmed to have resulted in many injuries, though they were all from indirect causes. There are many videos of the event and they are truly terrifying, especially when you learn that the meteor was completely undetected until it entered our atmosphere, which caused worldwide panic. The flash as it began to burn up was brighter than the sun, and when it exploded midair, the energy output was equivalent to the atomic weapon used on Hiroshima, sending out a massive shockwave that damaged buildings and was felt and heard for hundreds of miles. All of the 1,500 people injured were hurt while running or from broken glass or other indirect factors of the meteor. There was even another meteor which was detected to have a close approach on the same day, which was 10 meters larger and flew by us only 16 hours later. Man, February 15th, 2013 was a busy day for meteors. Number 2. Oumuamua. Discovered by the University of Hawaii's Pan-STARRS-1 telescope in 2017, Oumuamua is the first known interstellar object to visit our solar system. It was originally classified as a comet, but there were no signs of cometary activity after we witnessed it slingshot past the sun at a blistering speed of 196,000 miles per hour, or 87.3 kilometers per second. It was briefly classified as an asteroid until new measurements found it was accelerating slightly, which is very strange for any interstellar body. This massive cigar-shaped object is nearly a quarter mile long, or 400 meters, and its elongated shape is unlike anything we've witnessed in our solar system. Observation has shown that it may have come from the star system of Vega, though with the speed it was moving, it would have taken over 300 million years to make the journey to our solar system, and Vega was nowhere near that position at that time, leading to further questions. Many scientists believe that this could actually be an alien superstructure, as its strange journey and acceleration are studied more and more. Paul Kotis, manager of the Center for Near-Earth Object Studies at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, said that it's a strange visitor from a faraway star system, shaped like nothing we've ever seen in our own solar system neighborhood. Whether it's just an interstellar asteroid or someone coming to see what's up with Earth, we may never know, as it's being launched away from us after making a slingshot maneuver around our sun, the angle and trajectory of which some use as proof as the object being controlled or even driven by something. And finally, we reach our number one, the Hypatia Stone. The Hypatia Stone is one of the single greatest astronomical discoveries that we have ever made. Found in the Sahara Desert by Ali A. Barakat, this is no ordinary meteorite, but one that contains the remnants of a rare type of supernova. Some have even described it as a supernova in a bottle. Named after the ancient mathematician and astronomer Hypatia, who was the first female scholar in her field to have her life and accomplishments recorded, overcoming sexism in the process. Scientists are still learning more about its origins. It's believed that the stone was born in what is known as a Type 1a supernova, a rare kind of supernova where a dying star or white dwarf begins to leech energy off of a nearby star and regains energy in the process. These so-called vampire stars circle each other until the white dwarf has recovered enough energy to reignite the stellar reaction and explodes in a massive cloud of dust and pure energy, shooting things imbued with strange elements out into the ether. Measuring the metals found inside the stone is how we verified that it came from this kind of supernova, and that it crashed to Earth nearly 28 million years ago after being launched through space by the explosion. Having a supernova in our hands has helped us answer so many questions about the physics of space, but if you ask me, if there was one interstellar item that could have an alien curse, it's the rock that contains pieces of a rare supernova. Sounds like something an alien from Doctor Who would need to power their death machine or something.
At number 10, we have Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. And you think space, and where does your mind go? Star Wars or Star Trek? Well, congratulations if it's the former, because a little bit of Star Wars spent a little bit of time in space. Back in 2007, the space shuttle Discovery launched the STS-120 astronaut crew with an iconic prop on board with them. The lightsaber Mark Hamill used as Luke Skywalker back in Star Wars back in 2007 joined real astronauts in orbit for 2 whole weeks. An astronaut named Jim Riley said that there is a fine line between science fiction and reality, and the lightsaber served as a neat little link between the two space themes. Just imagine, they said they didn't open it, but if they did, they probably, like, let's be real, they did. They just opened it and they were like, phew. That's what I would. But let's go on to number 9, a corned beef sandwich. Now, if you're gonna go on a trip into space, you know it's gonna be a long one. And astronauts, they don't get the best food on board, getting most of their food freeze-dried or just nutrients they suck out of a pouch. But astronaut John Young was hoping for something just a little bit tastier. On March 23rd, 1965, John smuggled a corned beef sandwich on Flight Gemini 3. He got the sandwich from fellow astronaut Wally Schirra, who bought it from a Cocoa Beach, Florida deli. Now, because of the low gravity on the flight, it began to disintegrate when John took a bite, but he did say it was pretty good, and just if it would hold together, you know? All my sandwiches fall apart anyways, sadly. Anyways, another thing that made its way into space? At number 8, we have a saxophone. Now, for his birthday in 2007, Thomas Pesquet got a fun musical gift, his own saxophone. But it wasn't an ordinary delivery since Thomas lived on SpaceX's cargo craft at the time. It was delivered on the SpaceX Dragon alongside some French macaroons for his birthday, and yeah, he said he's a little out of practice since he stopped playing while he was training to be an astronaut, but isn't that cool? Once the workday is done, I can imagine that floating in space, you know, could get a little boring after a while. But if you have some smooth, jazzy tunes on a woodwind to keep you going, it'll all be alright, you know? You like jazz? Keep the beam references in. Okay. At number 7, piece of a plane. When Neil Armstrong went to the moon in 1969, he brought a little piece of a plane with him. And not just any plane too, but a piece of the rudimentary airplane the Wright brothers flew in 1903 when the aircraft came a few feet off the ground. Now, Neil had with him some of the fabric and some of the propeller of the Wright Flyer, and this was as a homage to pioneers that paved the way in aviation and beyond. Which, of course, all makes sense because the Wright brothers Flyer 1 was the first successful heavier-than-air powered aircraft. And so, you gotta respect those who came along before you, you know? Alright, get ready for it. This one's special. At number 6, we have dirt. And yeah, okay, obviously it's not just any dirt, but it is dirt. The dirt that did go into space came from the pitcher's mound at Yankee Stadium. And you might be thinking, why, Abby? So basically, Garrett Reisman is not only an astronaut, but also a huge Yankees fan. And he was flying on Space Shuttle Endeavour's STS-123 mission back in 2008, and astronauts are allowed to bring mementos, so he thought, hey, why not bring up a little bit of dirt from the stadium of my favorite team? And it seems worth it when you find out he also threw the first ceremonial first pitch from space in microgravity. So the man's dedicated and he's gonna go down in history, so seems good to me. Now, the next one hasn't just traveled into space, but it has stayed there. At number 5 is the fallen astronaut. Now, not all people who went to the moon made it back safely. It is a risky job to be an astronaut after all. So now, resting on the moon is a small aluminum figurine by Belgian artist Paul van Hooijdonk. It is stylized to try to depict an astronaut in a spacesuit as a way to commemorate those who have passed in the advancement of space exploration. It was put on the moon in 1971 next to a plaque listing 14 American and Soviet men who were known to have died at that point. This was organized by astronaut David Scott before his Apollo 15 lunar mission, and now it serves as a nice tribute to all those who give their life to space. And now, people haven't been the only mammals to not make it through a space mission, which brings me to number 4. Lots of dead space monkeys, many called Albert. Now, before people were sent into space, animals were used to test the waters, or the space. Now, in the US, monkeys or chimpanzees were used for this, and many were named Albert. After the first one they named Albert, they just decided to keep that name going. In some cases, when the apes passed away, the spacecrafts weren't reported as recovered, which has led people to believe that there may be some space junk out there with some monkeys still in them. Now, not all space places used monkeys back then. During the space race, the Soviets were using dogs to see how the atmosphere would affect creatures, which obviously sparked many heated debates on animal testing, but they don't do that anymore, so yay. Now let's move on to a lighter note, sports! At number 3 we have a golf ball. On the Apollo 14 trip, Alan Shepard decided to bring a couple of golf balls with him on his trip to the moon. He decided, hey, I'll take a few shots on the moon, so he attached a modified 8-iron club head to the end of a device that traditionally collects samples of moon dust, and then he just let her rip. Now, video footage shows that he missed the mark a few times and hit the ground before hitting the ball, but come on, can we really blame the guy? Gravity is different on the moon, so you have to give a guy some time to adjust, right? He sent one 200 yards, which, you know, isn't too bad, but then he sent another one for what he said went on for miles and miles. So one scientist did the math and said Alan was right. With the right hit, a golf ball could be sent about 2.5 miles. So at that point, that's quite a bit more than the world record of 515 yards, and I just want to say, Dad, can you do better than that? Just kidding, love you, Dad. Okay, bye. Let's move on to number 2, Buzz Lightyear toy. I mean action figure, whatever you call it, okay? So to infinity and beyond, and to infinity and beyond good old Buzz Lightyear went. Back in 2008, an action figurine of the Toy Story astronaut hopped aboard the International Space Station with Discovery mission STS-124. He had a jolly old time, possibly missing some other toys to hang out with, but returned 15 months later on STS-128. So now, before Lightyear went on his journey, he was even given the all clear to go by the other Buzz astronaut, Buzz Aldrin. In a promo video for NASA, Buzz Aldrin even told Buzz Lightyear that he, Buzz Aldrin, was the real Buzz. And yes, it's true. Buzz Lightyear's name was inspired by Buzz Aldrin, so this second man to step out on the moon has a legacy more than the moon, also Buzz Lightyear. Toy Story. Yes. But let's finish up with number 1, tardigrades, or water bears. So if you're wondering what these things are, haven't heard it through the grapevine, let me break it down for you. Tardigrades are very tiny, yet microscopic, 8-legged creatures that are known to survive extreme temperatures. They can withstand being heated to 150 degrees Celsius and frozen to almost absolute zero. So knowing this, scientists did experiments with tardigrades and found out that some could withstand being in the vacuum of space. And this is because they can be brought back to life decades after being dehydrated, or it's at least possibly connected to that. So right now there are some of these tardigrades, aka water bears, aka moss piglets, on the moon. Now this is since an Israeli spacecraft crash landed on the moon this April. Also, some people think they are still alive, so maybe they'll be the first inhabitants on the moon. That'd be kinda cool, little bears. Microscopic, but yeah. Now, number 10, a Pluto slug. Some people say Pluto isn't a planet or just a main planet anymore, just a dwarf planet. And to that, I say,
No, Pluto is a real planet in my heart, okay? Anyways, on to what really matters. In 2016, NASA's New Horizons spacecraft got some nice pics of an icy region on Pluto's surface. If you look at the picture, there's like a little black formation in the center, and behind it is a trail. So it looks like a little slug has been making its way across the icy terrain, carving its own little path, making its way through this just desolate space. No, okay, I'm not crying because it's actually a slug, because it probably isn't. The scientists are saying it's likely a dirty block of water ice floating in a denser solid of nitrogen, so not a slug, but like it looks like it. It still is a mystery on what exactly it is, because that's more a hypothesis, you could say, but it's probably not a slug. But it doesn't stop me from thinking, like, doesn't that sound like a nice children's book or something? The slug on Pluto. It'd be so cute. That's all I'm thinking. On to number 9. The Mars spoon? Question mark? So this is a much closer planet than Pluto, who is still a planet in my heart. So this is Mars. So on a photo captured by the beloved NASA Curiosity rover, you can see what looks like a spoon, possibly? Like, it looks like a spoon, honestly. There's a handle, check. Mini concave element on the end of the handle, also check. Yes, it just looks like it's covered in dust because it's on the surface of Mars, which is, you know, a red, dusty planet, but spoon, nonetheless. This was spotted by a YouTube user called UFO Hunter, which led to more people kind of agreeing and being like, yeah, it looks kind of like a spoon. From then on, more people were questioning, just like, yo, where did this spoon come from? Was a Martian eating an ice cream sundae before an entire Martian race was just wiped out? And so that's kind of what UFO Hunter was thinking, saying it may be left over from a lost civilization, but we could just be projecting our ideas onto a clump of space dust, honestly. What if it's one of those things where you just touch it and it crumbles? Could be. I don't know. At number 8, fish rock. Is this another thing we could just be projecting? This fish-looking thing spotted on Mars is probably just a rock, but we gotta remember, Mars once had an ocean even bigger than the Arctic Ocean. And even if it could be a rock, it probably is a rock, look at the similarities to a fish. An upturned nose, a fin, and even a finned tail too. Have I ever caught a fish? No. And have I tried? Yes, but if I did catch one, I bet it would look like this, and I bet it would also be a rock that I was trying to convince people was a fish, but let's move on to number 7, face on Jupiter. So yes, let's hop on over to another planet, our big one in our solar system, the big old gas giant Jupiter. And now this image shows what looks like a derpy looking face on the gas giant. It even has a lovely name. Wait for it. Jovi McJupiter face. Very nice, very cute. So this face was awarded that beautiful name by Jason Major, a citizen scientist who rotated a photo that NASA took. Now, NASA's Juno spacecraft sent down an unaltered photo, and Major was like, nah. Let's interpret these two storms as eyes and the wider swirling red part as a mouth, which is genius. Now, Jovi McJupiter face obviously shows we can see the beauty and art in anything in nature and life. So now the next section that we're going to be talking about is staying within the realm of our solar system, but going a little closer, a little smaller. So let's take a peek at the moons we have. So at number 6 we have Ravioli Moon. This delectable little treat of a moon is one of Saturn's moons. Its name is Pan, and yes, it looks like a little treat of ravioli. And ravioli gets tossed in a pan with butter or oil, right? Does that blend the two names together enough for you? Connections. Fun. Anyways, the reason it looks like the pasta is because material from Saturn's rings falls onto Pan's equator, and the buildup results in the really unique buildup on the equator that makes me think, you know, ravioli. But maybe if you don't have food on the brain, you may think Pan looks more like a flying saucer, and in that case, right on. But for me, ravioli. On to number 5, Death Star Moon. The second and last of our honorable moon mentions is Mimas, or Mimas, aka the Death Star Moon. Now this is another of Saturn's many moons, and this one garners a few more eyes because of its similarities to the Death Star from Star Wars. And you know, the big dish on the Death Star? Boom, big crater on Mimas. Is this really the Death Star in disguise? Probably not, since it's been orbiting Saturn for a bit, plus that idea was mainly for a fictional universe. Also mainly, this moon is really big. So Mimas is 396 kilometers in diameter, and the first Death Star and second Death Star were both between 160 and 140 kilometers in diameter. So if you're thinking, yeah, but what about the third Death Star? Well, that one's too big, measuring about 900 kilometers in diameter, so it's not that one either. So it's not the Death Star in disguise, so you can, you know, exhale and breathe a little bit. But it is a cool looking moon, so Yep. Okay, so next up is not only out of this world, but also out of this solar system. The next three we have are nebulas, which, if you don't know, are super cool on their own, even if they don't look like anything in particular, but these next three have the added X factor of looking just really cool. At number 4, we have Horsehead Nebula. So this first nebula we're looking at was captured by the Hubble Space Telescope back in 2013. The stunning nebula got the nickname Horsehead Nebula because of its looks. Think back to cloud watching when you were younger and seeing the shapes in them, and you can see that this nebula looks like the head and neck of a horse in this image with the nose of the horse facing the left. And unfortunately, we can't pay this little horsey a visit because it's about 1500 light years away from the Orion constellation. And for reference, Orion's constellation is 243 to 1360 light years away from us, so little ways away, but you can still admire it for its beautiful looks. This next one, number 3, is Space Crab. And so this one is quite a ways further. It's about 6,500 light years away from Earth, and it's the Crab Nebula. Now, let's look a bit more at this 5-layered composite image of this bad boy. So the composite image, it looks like something out of a movie. 1, stunning, and then again 2, the colors, magnificent, such range. Do I sound like I'm impersonating Jonathan Van Ness? Yes. It looks like an artist made it. It's beautiful. And yes, this nebula is called the Crab Nebula because the range of its legs, so it said, but others have also compared these outstretchings to an octopus's tentacles. And so if you're having a hard time seeing these legs or arms that I'm talking about, look mainly at the pink sections and a little bit at the yellow, and I find it helps you paint a picture of what you're looking at. I am the nebula. On to another nebula, the Twin Jet Nebula, also known as a space butterfly. So this cosmic butterfly looking thing is actually a 2-lobed nebula. It has the official name PN-M2-9, and it was originally spotted back in 1947. It's more commonly known as the Twin Jet Nebula because really it looks like 2 jets coming out of the back of a rocket ship colliding into one another, and then the blasts radiating outwards. I feel like you could even argue it's 2 pop bottles head to head shrouded in like a green atmosphere. But then if you look right in the center, I say it looks like a fairy from Legend of Zelda, which looks a bit like a butterfly. So that's where you get the name Cosmic Butterfly. Mystery solved. The Twin Jet Nebula is obviously a fairy from Legend of Zelda. You're welcome. So our number 1 is the D&D asteroid. And obviously this one is my number 1 because I am a gamer. A tabletop role-playing gamer, that is. Asteroid 2017 BQ6 has been compared to dice used in playing Dungeons & Dragons and also other tabletop games because of its angular shape. And you kind of have to know that this is kind of odd because most planets and stuff around space is rounded. Kind of looks like a bunch of either spheres or just potatoes passing through. And so this asteroid passed from a distance of about 1.6 million miles away, but it didn't, land anywhere like dice usually do. And like, if you think about it, there's already enough people thinking we are living in a simulation. But guys, what if we live in a game? One of their dice in the great unknown fell into space, and now they're laughing at us because we rolled a natural 1 on perception. A simulation game. You're thinking The Sims, I'm thinking they're just dictating each of our lives with dice rolls. It's all up to random. Who knows?